how similar are Bangkok and New York City? Listen, guys, I just came from New York. I'm in Bangkok right now. Here are 20 reasons why they are strikingly similar. Let's run a clip. Boom, listen guys, I'm not the only one that's noticed this. I think a lot of people are looking at Bangkok and New York City right now. They're visually very similar. Obviously, it's on a different scale. One is almost like the New York City of Southeast Asia, and you could argue that New York City is almost like the New York City of the world, or certainly at least North America or the Western world. That's where the UN is headquartered. So anyway, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. I'm just talking about the energies of the city. I mean, I think they're both really dynamic atmospheres. They both have really high-end, really low-end things, and they're both major economic and cultural hubs, which is really different than, say, for example, LA and SF. LA is a cultural hub, but not an economic hub. San Francisco is an economic hub on the tech side, but is not a cultural hub other than obviously tech culture. So we got to get into it because there's a ton of people comparing these things right now. Like I said, there's other cities mixed in there. I think there's some Tokyo. I think there's some Hong Kong, specifically, you know, Bangkok. But even like one Bangkok and like Icon Siam, it really reminds me more of like Central, like Tungwan, and then Kuala Lumpur is in there too. But today I'm just gonna be comparing New York City and Bangkok because that's where I'm spending a lot of time right now. So anyway, point number one, I think there's a lot of multiculturalism. If you look at NYC, there was Chinatown, Little Italy. If you look at Bangkok, that's got Yarawat, Chinatown, and Little India, amongst other ethnic neighborhoods. And a lot of these things have been part of these cities for many, many decades now. Obviously, like Little Greece and Astoria in New York is like not necessarily 100 years old, but like they've got 120-year-old Italian-American enclaves in Coney Island, and Chinatown in Bangkok is like 250 years old, actually. And there's Little India. There's also other like little expat bubbles, like Little Tokyo in Bangkok. And you could say there's a couple areas like that, Prampong or Tongluar. It's like, how old are those, you know, because it's like not necessarily a historic neighborhood that's been settled, but it certainly feels like a modern, different multicultural neighborhood or things like that. You know, it reminds me a little bit about Canada in the sense that there's a lot of Euros, Indians, and Chinese in Bangkok. It's a little bit different from New York, because New York, obviously, you're getting like a lot of Caribbean people from the Himalayas, certain things that you don't necessarily see represented in Bangkok. But I'm just saying on a multicultural level, it feels a lot more like New York than you think. Not as multicultural as New York, though. New York is really like the world's capital. Like I said, the UN is centered there. But very, very multicultural Bangkok. I give it a lot of credit. Number two, the 24/7 energy. I think both cities never sleep. There's a ton of stuff going on 24/7. And I think in 2024, there might even be more 24/7 stuff in Bangkok than New York City, because New York really slowed down on the 24/7 culture post-COVID, like a lot less than it used to be. But both cities, they have this like constant energy beat. And I would say maybe New York's beat is a little bit more like hardcore Swiss beats, Rough Riders, whereas the beat that is going 24/7 in Bangkok is more lo-fi. But you guys let me know, am I right or wrong? Listen guys, these are just my observations. I don't really know, right? I'm just an observer observing things. Point number three, iconic street food. Obviously, New York was known for the hot dogs and the pretzels for a long time. But yeah, I think Bangkok has more street food, even though since 2017, the Bangkok government has instituted more restrictions on street food. But obviously in New York, you see churros on a train. There's different fruit carts, especially more in Queens, more towards, I want to say, the Latino areas, but uptown too. It just really depends. But I just think New York street food, man, for example, is like the chestnuts. They smell great, but they don't taste very good, the roasted chestnuts. And I'm more just getting the fruit, but I see a lot more fruit in LA just due to the climate and stuff like that, and more Latinos. But like, I don't know, it's like a lot of street food to me in New York is kind of moving indoors. Like Halal Guys really made that move indoors, right? But multiple places around the city. I think like Los Tacos #1 is a 10 out of 10, the best taco you can get in Manhattan, but that's really moving indoors. That's not outdoors or like an outdoors market moved indoors, which is what Chelsea Market was, but it's way more higher end anyway. But yeah, I think Bangkok wins on street food, even though a lot of people are telling me that the street food in Bangkok is moving into malls now and becoming a little bit more like Singapore, where they have the hawker stalls, but then they moved the hawker stall culture indoors into malls and replicated bakate and things like that. And yeah, a lot of arguments about whether, I like how it tastes in the mall too, to be honest. I mean, it's the same dish. Yes, do you lose some of the soul? Absolutely, but everything's pros and cons when you monetize or commoditize or commercialize. Point number four, high population density. You look at these density maps across the city for both Bangkok and Bangkok and New York City, you could see it. There's a lot of charting about like population density in different zones. Is it hotter during the day in the financial district, or because obviously in New York there's two financial districts, Midtown and Phi-Dai, and then where is it at in Bangkok? Like different zones have different like hot zone population heat mapping at different points during the day due to essentially like day jobs, right? Where are the day jobs headquartered and what industries are headquartered? We're talking about growing tech scenes or financial scenes and things like that. Point number 5, public transportation systems. Obviously you got the MTA in New York, as well as a bus system. And then you've got obviously the BTS, as well as the MTR and different Sky Rails or Skylinks and different things like that. But I will say this, the New York one has a lot more craziness on it, whether it's like people dancing on the train, kids surfing on top, panhandlers, but also performers. It gives it texture, but it also makes it way more unstable. Everybody's seen a bum peeing on the train or doing worse, pleasuring himself, right? At some point, I'm not saying it's as common as social media makes it seem, but I've seen it. I see definitely somebody pee on a train. I think that the BTS is way more orderly in Bangkok, but in Asia in general, to be honest. Like, they just wouldn't tolerate a lot of that stuff. And actually, a lot of places wouldn't tolerate that stuff. It's really like a New York thing. Anyway, point number 6, global tourism hubs. As you can see, in 2023, Bangkok was the most visited city in the entire world at 22 million. New York was coming in, I believe, at number, 7? And the only city in America that was in the top 7 for 13.6 million. By the way, these are international travelers. Obviously, LA, New York, Miami, et cetera, they get a lot of domestic travelers, right? So LA gets about 7 million international visitors a year. I looked it up. So it's different metrics for internal and external. Point number 7, they're both major economic centers for their own country, but also the region. I think it's a little bit different here because obviously New York City is the economic center for the world, but also for America. And then Singapore is the economic hub for Southeast Asia, but Bangkok could, it depends on how they play their cards. It's like, it could be, but it seems like Singapore has sort of solidified that. But they're both basically at least major economic hubs, right? Point number 8, bustling markets. I think that everybody's familiar with like the fake markets on Canal Street in Chinatown. And they're selling a ton of stuff. But actually, there's way better markets in Bangkok in terms of bustling markets. And I think the markets are really great. It's like, it's its own auxiliary economy that runs outside of things. But for me personally, listen, guys, I'm just saying for me, I do like Lazada, I do like Shopee because, you get the reviews and stuff like that, which is almost like, man, I want to say Lazada and Shopee, they have better prices than Amazon, but maybe the organizational structure of like the reviews and stuff, I do like Amazon a little bit better. So there's pros and cons, guys. Number 9, traffic congestion. New York City is probably considered the most congested city in America. Bangkok is the most congested city in Thailand, but I think Bangkok is actually considered the most congested city possibly in the region, maybe the world. I got to look into that, guys. I think Mumbai was like or New Delhi or something was way up there too, but it really depends on what metrics you're going to, because some cities are congested all day long. Some cities are congested just for a moment. Some cities like Manila, it's like very congested on the main throughway, but then like maybe not as congested outside of that. So it's really difficult to gauge traffic and it's like holisticness, right? Number 10, diverse nightlife. For example, like Lower East Side in New York, like obviously there's meatpacking. There's like all these different zones for different types of people, different strokes for different folks. But obviously in Bangkok, you have places like Thong Lor, which is more of like an upscale Asian crowd. But then you have all these like more of the, the degen spots for tourists. You have Khao San Road and Nana. And it's just different types of nightlife in different zones. And ranging from rooftops to dive bars. I think there's something for everyone at every tier. Like, let's say, for example, we're going to gauge things from like a 1 to 10 tier. Let's just say this Bangkok and New York City have a plethora of choices, 1 through 10, going upscale, going whatever, black market, gray market. They both got a lot, right? Point number 11, skyline dominance. I think you're looking at the New York skyline, the Bangkok skyline, and it just keeps growing. I think the Bangkok skyline at some point is going to surpass the New York skyline just simply due to different regulatory things, different air rights, less tape on the developers. And some people are going to view that as a good thing, and some people view that as a bad thing. I know some people who buy luxury condos out here, that it kind of makes them nervous because they know that there's endless building of super high sky rises, endless condos, so it sort of depresses the price along that price point. Whereas in New York, yeah, the air rights and different zoning and protesters can like impact more and things like that. They can like shut out Amazon out of LIC if they want to and things like that. So it's just different. There's pros and cons, man. It depends on where you are, what positioning you have in the ecosystem, right? Point number 12, the love for rooftop bars. For example, Bangkok's rooftop bars, I think, are actually better than New York City's on just a pure visual level. Vertigo Sky Bar versus Fifth Avenue, or like, for example, I always spend more time on the Lower East Side, so the roof at the public hotel is really expensive. It's a nice view, but if you want to look at the Bangkok rooftops, they look like something out of a movie scene, or like Sims, or like Sim City or something like that, where you're building something where you're like, I could never get that approved in America. Like, as crazy as the architecture is in New York, I think that if people committed to it, there's less, from what I know and from what I've heard from people that I know, there's less things stopping people from achieving their imaginations, even in Bangkok on a developer level, should they end up deciding that's what the market desires, right? Point number 13, street performances. I think both cities celebrate street culture through performers and buskers and things and different things, but maybe in New York it's just a little bit wackier. You got the people dressed up in costumes. You've got obviously this buff dude working out with a clown mask in Times Square, kind of doing like a juggalo thing or whatever. But then in here, obviously you've got a ton of street art and street graffiti that looks a little bit more Asian, but also they have a ton of live music out here. And of course, yeah, like I said, I don't want to talk about what else is on the street in New York, but it might be, I'm in Bangkok, but it might be on the street in certain districts in New York too. So it's like, yeah, I get it. We're gonna give that. We're moving on to number 14. There's a mixture of old and new. Bangkok's got amazing temples and history harkening back to the old civilizations and the empires and the kingdoms, right? Like in New York, obviously America is a newer country. It's part of the New World, which was founded by like a lot of Dutch people and British people and German people, etc. Like that was, there. And then like you have old and new from like several hundred years ago. I want to say, like, I lived in a building in New York City that was over 110 years old, but obviously I'd gone through multiple renovations over that period of time. Point number 15, fast-paced lifestyle. Both cities, they got like just this never-ending energy, right? Like when you depict it in a movie or a documentary or a TV show that's being expository, it's always in a blur. They always do that open shutter blur, right? Because that's just like what is capturing the vibe or the energy. However, I will say, like I said before, one is like a Swiss Beats instrumental, like from Just In Case, at least. And then one is more like Bangkok lo-fi with the girl with the cat in the window, but it's still constant, both never ending, pulsing for sure. Number 16, both have really diverse cuisines. And I would say, for example, like New York is probably more diverse because there's more diverse types of people in New York, but Bangkok in a way is even more diverse than you would think, given that it's in Asia. Like New York has to be diverse because it's like 10% from everywhere, 10 types of people from around the globe, right? But considering Bangkok is more of like a traditionally Thai place, but it's also mixed over time with the Sinosphere and the Indiosphere, as well as like its own Thai culture. It's like more diverse than you would think, in the sense that you can get Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Italian pizza on almost like every block, at least in the city. Like some version of it might not be the best version of it, but you're gonna get a great version of Thai food everywhere. And you got regional Thai, north, south, east, west, seafood Thai, like curry Thai. There's different, like, even so, like Thai cuisine, in my opinion, is the most diverse cuisine per capita, population wise. So basically, like, yes, there's, of course, like China's gonna be really diverse because there's like 1 billion people plus a diaspora, but like Thailand is hyper diverse from people just coming in within Thailand over the years, and different climates and different geography, right? Like beach versus inland versus mountains versus et cetera, et cetera. Point number 17, expats and migrants. Both cities got a huge amount of expats and migrants. And, NYC's diversity, like Bangkok has a growing international population. I really see it at a place like this, like the Commons here in Thong Lor, for example. Point number 18, cultural capital. I think that there's a ton of cultural, I always thought this is what makes it unique. Bangkok is Thailand's political capital, economic capital, and cultural capital. That's very rare for things to be headquartered in all three places. For example, in America, DC is the political capital. New York is the financial capital, also a cultural capital, but LA is also a cultural capital, and SF is a tech economic capital. And then you could argue Miami now is like sort of becoming some sort of auxiliary of all those things too, but you know, on a second tier. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like basically there's a lot of that. Seattle is a second tier tech capital. So a lot of stuff in America, because America's so big and got so much money, it's kind of like parsed out in a lot of different places. Number 19, innovation hubs, right? You're looking at the tech sector where everything in the world is moving. Global finance will still always be there, right? Global finance has been around for hundreds of years in banking and things like that, but everything is moving towards tech, AI, robotics. Bangkok has the tech sector, growing tech sector. New York also has a growing tech sector, only second to SF, but people would say a far second, but it's starting to close the gap a little bit because a lot of people are leaving SF because of just, they don't like the life there anymore and moving to New York and everything's going more remote, right? Some people are working on odd hours and stuff like that. I see that digital nomad thing growing everywhere across the globe, right? And then point number 20, the 20th thing that makes Bangkok and New York feel similar to me. Like I said, I didn't live in New York forever. I didn't live in Bangkok, definitely just for a little while, but I did talk to a lot of people, and just is resilience. Like a lot of people, New York, for example, they go through a lot, terrorism, corrupt mayors. Did you know a lot of people like don't even know that New York used to be the capital of America, but because they, once the New York North and South had a war, they had to move something that was closer to in the center, so it wasn't like the needs of one side only got catered to. But like Bangkok has been through a ton of things too. Look at historically, the history, things have been moved around, neighborhoods have been moved around, maybe by different kings or different, you know what I mean? And I just think that it's just, they're both so special in that way that they're almost like we said, like New York used to be the capital of America. It's certainly the financial capital of America, and it's arguably the cultural capital, even though you can make an argument for other places. Bangkok for sure is the politics center, the financial center, and the cultural center of Thailand. And I think that that's what makes them feel so, like, even just like the amount of high tier graffiti that you can see, you don't see that in every city in America. Like I'm not saying you don't see graffiti in America, because graffiti, I want to say maybe came from America, but like you don't see necessarily high quality artistic graffiti where it's like almost entering that tier where like, oh, this is high art, you know, high urban art. Like, you know what I mean? So I just think that both cities are shockingly similar. And there are, to be honest, yes, there are both places of haves and have-nots. But even the have-nots, they may be such energized by some type of vibe that they have their own culture within that. You know what I mean? And it's not just like fully depressed and broken. It's like that, you know, people who are on a lower socioeconomic scale, they may have, they've developed things, just like that's what hip hop comes out of from New York City. And I think that that's why, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Listen, guys, I'm just giving my observations. I'm not the expert. I don't know. I'm just speaking on it because I'm a curious person. But it's like, when a place has a very special mojo and a vibe, it allows people across income levels, whether it's like, you know, poverty level, higher poverty level, lower middle class, upper middle class, the high end. Each tier has access to the mojo that makes the city and almost allows them to develop their own vibe and their own tribe. And it's not that way in every city, because not every city has this certain particular blend of mojo, infrastructure, systems, historical identities, and things like that. So those are my 20 ways that I think New York City and Bangkok are similar. I mean, I'm gonna go through them one more time just to recap for you guys so you can tell me if you can agree or disagree. Number 1 was multiculturalism. Number 2 was the 24/7 energy. Number 3 was iconic street food. Number 4 was high population density, obviously shifting per zone, per day based on the economic flows. Number 5 was public transportation system. That changes the complexion of a city, right? Number 6, global tourism hubs. Number 7, economic centers. Number 8, bustling markets. Number 9, traffic congestion. Number 10, diverse nightlife. Number 11, skyline dominance. Number 12, love for rooftops. Rooftop bars specifically, guys, for, you know, more for the high soul crowd, I would say in both places, right? Number 13, street performances. Number 14, an hyper old mix of old and new. Number 15, fast-paced lifestyle. Number 16, diverse cuisines. Number 17, expats and migrants. Number 18, cultural capital. Number 19, innovation hubs. Number 20, resilience. And last but not least, guys, this is a bonus point. Have you ever seen any other country, city in America have tuk-tuks? There's tuk-tuks in Midtown New York City that'll take you anywhere, and they're expensive. And they got tuk-tuks here in Bangkok. And probably that's the one thing that came from Bangkok to New York City. I gotta look into that. But let me tell me if I'm wrong, guys. I know they're not Thai drivers in Midtown. They're usually like, I want to say Middle Eastern. But there's tuk-tuks in Midtown that'll tax you. But it's fun. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Those are the 20 ways that I just feel like New York City and Bangkok are very similar. They're strikingly similar. Obviously, they're different, guys. Duh. But just the way it feels. And there's a certain, thing that you can explain, but part of it is just unexplainable that goes into a certain mojo that feels similar across places, literally across the world from each other. Let me know what you think of my list. Agree, disagree, augment, supplement. Guys, like I said, I don't make these lists to offend anybody, but if you are offended, I apologize, I guess, but that wasn't my intention. Let me know in the comment section below. I'm out. Peace.